So we finally made it to the end of the year, and I'm going to go through all the books that I read this year. I'm not going to really mention the comic books, only like the omnibus and like trade paperback ones, and a lot of the trade paperback ones I'm not even mentioning because there's like so many. Single issues, forget it, there's too much. But I definitely read more this year than I think I did last year, like for sure. So chronologically from the beginning of the year to now, this is what I read. So the first one was Human by Day, Zeta by Night by Judy Carroll. And then I also didn't make reviews on every single book, so that one's that. So that one's a fiction story about her actual experiences. Oh, I read it later. I thought it was after. I'm going to mention it later in the video. Then I read part 2 of The Andreasen Affair by Raymond E. Fowler. Super good. I loved that one. More real-life encounters of ET abductions. Then I read The Incal by Jodorowsky and Mobius. That's their last names. I believe this is like before Dune. Nothing to do with Dune, but I think it comes before Dune, if that makes sense. Predates Dune. Not the same universe or anything, completely different. And then I read this huge one, X of Swords. This year I really started to get into the comic books, so I started my collection this year. And then I read like up to probably like volume 16, if there's even a thing. But I read so many of those, that whole storyline, the Krakoa era of this year. And then the Hellfire Gala, the hardcover version of the 2021 Hellfire Gala. And then I got the 2022 single issues of the Hellfire Gala. This one was so good, the Darkhold, or just Darkhold. And I have this cover too. It's like apparently really hard to get it. I don't know why, but that's that one. That one was really good. And then I finally read House of M. I have never read it before until this year. I have the trade paperback of it. I'm just like not going to show every single like physical book. It's going to take forever. I'm just showing the photo of it. And then I read the Fantastic Four by Dan Slott, volumes 1 and 2. And after finished reading those, I caught up with the current Fantastic Four up to like, I think it's like 48 or 47 issue. And then I read this omnibus, and then I had to give it away to the library because sorry to the writers, but I thought it wasn't that great. I also read this by Michael Falday, Playing with Matches. Love poetry. I love to read at least 1 or 2 poetry books, especially by him and his girlfriend. I also read The Watchers. This is like basically book 3 in the Andreasen Affair story. Raymond E. Fowler as well. These are super good. And then I read, I have been waiting for these to come out in omnibus form for like a year. The Fantastic Four omnibus, volume 1 by Jonathan Hickman. This was so good. And then volume 2 by Jonathan Hickman. That same series. That's one. This is the cover that I have. So good. That cover is so nice. I love it. And then I also read the ET Speak Who We Are and Why We're Here by Howard Beatty. I think I remember this one being pretty good. And then this is the actual like non-fiction version of the very first book I mentioned in the video, called The Zeta Message by Judy Carroll. So this is like the autobiography of it, kind of. So she turned her reality into like a fictional book in the first one, and then that one it's a non-fictional book. And then I read The Meta Barons that I made a video on, Jodorowsky and Jimenez, and part of the Incal universe. this was very, 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 very good. Then I read, I guess I read part 1 last year, but this year I read volume 2, High Strangeness, from the Glimpses of Other Realities book by Linda Moulton Howe. This series was so good, and it's impossible to find those books. Then I also read Magic issue number 1. I didn't really like it. Unfortunately, I didn't really like it. I really wanted to because the artwork looks so good, but it wasn't for me. And then, I know this is like a terrible picture, but The Multiversity by Grant Morrison. Yeah, the deluxe edition. This is DC, by the way. Multiversity. This was not the best either. This was super good. Time Travelers from Our Future, A Fifth Dimension Odyssey by Dr. Bruce Goldberg. I already made a video on this. So good about how time travel is very, very real, and the chrononauts are in our timeline. And then I have Past Lives, Future Lives Revealed by Dr. Bruce Goldberg. Super, super good. That one was really great. And then I read The Interrupted Journey by John G. Fuller. This is about the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, which honestly, I thought it was going to be way better, but it was very repetitive. I'm trying to not show the ring light. And then I finally read this. I've skimmed it before, but this time I fully read it. The Twilight Saga, the Official Illustrated Guide by Stephenie Meyer. I had to order it literally from like Canada because it was like impossible to find the version that I wanted. I wanted like the hardcover, not the soft paperback. I wanted like the original print. I think I got it from Atom Books. And then Conversations with Nostradamus Volume 1, His Prophecies Explained by Dolores Cannon. This one was okay. It was pretty good. Not my most favorite Dolores Cannon. And it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. I guess I put it on a really high pedestal. This book I read in literally one sitting. It was so insane. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. We all know this was a New York Times bestseller. Unfortunately, because of the circumstances in the book. But it was so wild. Then I read Protected by the Light, the complete book of psychic self-defense by Dr. Bruce Goldberg. I thought this was really informative and educational. This has a lot of, tells you a lot about like dark magic and good magic. Goop Clean Beauty. So I've had this since 2020. I was reading it during lockdown, but it was more of like a book that I would go to whenever I was like in the vibe to read a blog type book, but in print, if that makes sense. And this is literally that. So this is by the Goop team, but the foreword is by Gwyneth Paltrow. I love that book a lot, actually. And then we have The Techno Priest, which I just did a review on. It was so good. So good. And then I read The Forgotten Promise, Rejoining Our Cosmic Family by Sherry Wilde. The story of a lifelong interaction with beings from another world. I didn't make a review on this because I didn't feel like I needed to. It was really good, and I just feel really bad that her daughters think she's crazy, even though they're the ones being abducted by ETs as well, so make it make sense. And then I have here The Divine Design by Lori Ladd, the untold story of Earth's and humanity's evolution and consciousness. I literally just finished this today, and I have to do a review on this because there's actually a lot of information that I want to share with this one. I also read like Young Avengers and like so many other stuff, like Trial of Magneto and like little things like that that I'm not even including here. But I'm not gonna go into depth, but there's 3 books that I read and I had on my channel here. But I will not be discussing them because the author literally came for me on Twitter, and like I will never forgive her for that. And so it was just so foul, like how she came for me, and I don't even want to relive it because it's so annoying and it really pisses me off. But her name, that author's name and that author's books will never be mentioned again in any of my videos and any of my channels. I took everything down from every social media site about her because she literally could have told me something nicely, and she didn't. She literally just like came for me. So make sure if you ever do that, I'm completely removing you from my life and from all my social media. So those are all the books that I read this year, including those 3 that I'm not mentioning that took me a while to read because they were very, very, very informative. And unfortunately, because of the author's choice of how to treat me, will never be mentioned in any of my videos ever.